Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about fractions. The first thing you need to do is set up your notebook into 4 sections today, just like shown here. So this first part we're going to look at the top section. Now the first thing we need to do is see how a fraction is written. I'm going to use this as our example. So in fractions, each part has a specific name. This top number is called the numerator. This number tells you the part that you're looking at, how many of the parts that are shaded or how many parts are not shaded, or something like that. The bottom number is called the denominator. This number tells you how many pieces are part of the whole or how many there are in total. So this fraction that I have right here represents 3 out of 4 total parts. Now those 4 total parts also need to be equal. The way we say this fraction is 3/4 because we're talking about 3 out of the 4 equal and total parts. So now in this other section, I want you to divide it in half this way. And I want you to label the top part examples and the bottom part non-examples. So here we're going to be looking at what makes something qualify as being called fraction and what makes something not qualify to be called a fraction. So now you're going to take the shapes that you have with you and you're going to cut out the examples and the non-examples that I show you here. Okay, so this is the first example I want you to put in. The reason this qualifies as an example is because the shape is broken up into equal parts. There are 6 equal parts and one of them is shaded. This next one is also an example. Here we have 3 equal parts, the circles, and 2 of them are shaded. And finally we have this one as an example. The circle is divided into 2 equal parts and one of them is shaded. Now we're going to move on to the non-examples. Now this circle here is the first non-example we're going to glue in. This circle is cut into 4 pieces, but they're not equal. I can tell that the 2 pieces on each end are a little bit smaller than the pieces that are in the middle. This next non-example is a rectangle that is cut into 6 pieces, but I can tell that the 2 pieces on the left side are much larger than the 4 pieces that are on the right side, so they're not equal pieces. Finally, this triangle is another non-example because here it's broken into 2 pieces that are not equal. The top part is smaller than the bottom part. Okay, so now that we've seen a little bit of the vocabulary for fractions, the numerator, which tells the part, the denominator, which tells you how many there are in the whole thing, and we saw a couple of examples and non-examples, now we're going to practice naming the fraction. The first thing I need you to do is to label each side of your bottom half of your notes. The first side is going to be parts of a whole. The second side is going to be parts of a set. So we're going to be looking at 2 different ways that fractions can be represented. Okay, now we're going to be using the rest of the fractions that you have in your paper. So first we're going to look at the fractions that are parts of a whole. Okay, this is the first figure we're going to look at for parts of a whole. So here I can see that I have 4 parts in total and one of them is shaded. Therefore here my fraction represented is 1 out of 4 equal parts. We named this fraction 1/4 because I have 1 out of the 4 equal parts. Okay, this is the next figure we're going to look at. Here, see if you can figure out what fraction we should write. Pause the video and write the fraction yourself, then restart the video and see if you got it correct. So here we have 5 equal parts and 2 of them are shaded. Therefore, our fraction is 2 out of 5 or 2/5. So we say 2/5 because we have 2 out of the 5 equal parts. This next shape we have here has 8 equal parts and 4 of them are shaded. So our fraction here is 4 out of 8, or 4/8. So now we have all of our parts of a whole examples. So now we're going to move on to parts of a set. Now here the difference is that when we had parts of a whole, we had one whole figure that was broken up into pieces. When we have parts of a set, we have individual different figures that are either shaded or not. So let's look at our first example. Okay, so this right here is our first example. I can see that I have two different figures and one of them is shaded. So here our fraction is 1 out of 2, or 1/2. So here I can see the difference between the parts of a whole and parts of a set, that in parts of a set I have a set of objects instead of one whole piece that is broken up into different sections. Okay, here is our next example. In this example, we have 8 different little stars, and one of them is shaded. So we have 1 out of the 8 pieces, or 1/8 shaded. Okay, let's look at our next example. In this example, we have 5 different triangles, and 4 of them are shaded. So 4 out of the 5 triangles are shaded, or 4/5. So now here we have all of our examples of the parts of a whole and parts of a set. So this is the different ways that you can represent fractions. Now your notes should look like this, except with your examples glued in and your fractions written. Be prepared to discuss and make sure you've answered your question. Bye.